School is back in session, right? Hip, hip, hooray. Probably if you're a parent, maybe if you're a student, right? Tyler and Emma, you're probably all rip-roaring ready to go, right? School is back in session. And so fall fashion is in the air, right? Because of that, I'd like to take a brief clothing survey asking you this question. What is the most shocking piece of clothing in your closet? Now, be honest, just to yourself. We're not going to ask for people to raise their hands. Aren't you nice? And I'm nice about this, all right? So, maybe it's actually a pink and purple bathrobe. How shocking! Wow. But don't let anybody know if that's the most shocking piece of bodywear in your closet. Maybe it's a Chicago Cubs baseball hat. You're still rooting on those Northsiders. You love the friendly confines of Wrigley Field. Pretty shocking to have a Cub fan here, but maybe that's the truth. Maybe it's a Hawaiian shirt your wife can't stand. You put it on when it's party time and your wife says, "Oh, honey," but you insist that this is your party shirt. Maybe it's a t-shirt that Goodwill won't even take, right? You're never going to part with this. Before I part with this t-shirt, I will be buried in this t-shirt. Maybe kind of fill in the blank. What is the most shocking piece of bodywear in your closet? Well, under the category of full disclosure, this is the most shocking piece of bodywear in my closet. And you say, what's so shocking about a sweatshirt? Well, wait till you see what's on the front of this sweatshirt. This is very shocking. I mean, I can't believe this is in my closet. But look at this. What's it say? Cubs. There is a soft spot in my heart. It really is when it comes to the Chicago Cubs. Talk about shocking bodywear. There's a professor at the University of Connecticut. His name is Greg Soetzing. And Greg Soetzing has invented what he calls emotional clothing. And here they are up on the screens. Emotional clothing. Through electric chromic threads tied into the clothing, this clothing changes color based upon the mood you feel. So everyone knows if you're happy. Conversely, everyone knows if you're sad or mad and not all that glad. That's shocking bodywear, isn't it? Well, I think all of you know we've been working our way through Colossians in July and now in August. And we come to this verse this morning in Colossians chapter 3, verse 12, where Paul writes these words. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves. That's it. Paul says, take off the vices and put on the Christian virtues. And what Paul is going to go on to say and describe in verse 12b, as well as Colossians 3:13 and 3:14, would be some very culturally radical, paradigm exploding, shocking bodywear, especially when it comes to our relationships. Ooh, that's kind of touchy, isn't it? Our relationships with students, with spouses, with children, grandchildren, next-door neighbors, people we work with, our third cousin 8 times removed. Relationships. See, relationships cause so much pain and so much angst in our life because we are so confused about relationships. And Paul says, let me help you with your relationships today. I want you to dress for relational success. But before we do that, we got to see what kind of problems we're in our relationships. It comes in large part because we buy into relational lies. Now, let me give you 4 relational lies, just to give you an idea of why we feel so sick and sad and relationships are so full of strife. The first lie we believe is that if this is really a good relationship, I shouldn't have to work at it. Folks, that's not true at all. The best relationships in life take a whole lot of hard work. Lie number 2. If my spouse really loved me, if my spouse really cared for me, then my spouse would instinctively know how I feel and what I'm thinking. Folks, that's a lie. The truth is, people can't read each other's minds. Lie number 3. Disagreements destroy relationships. No, that's a lie. The truth is, avoiding disagreements destroy relationships. Lie number 4, why we get in so much relational angst. I would be most happy in this relationship if I could change that person. So my goal in this relationship is you are going to change. That's a lie. The truth is, good luck with that. Paul says, clothe yourselves for relational success and not failure. And so, what he's going to do, he's going to describe 7 different pieces of clothing that we put on ourselves. We might even call them Paul's gospel garments. In the first sets, the first 5 pieces of clothing have to do with this idea. We put them on and we experience cooperation instead of polarization. Polarization is when I'm just going to, polarize myself. Live alone, think alone, act alone, cut myself off from everybody and everything. Well, the opposite of that would be cooperation. I'm involved. So if we want cooperation instead of polarization, Paul, in the rest of verse 12 of Colossians 3, outlines these 5 pieces of clothing. And the first one would be compassion. Compassion. What happens a lot of times over time in relationships is that we become kind of mechanical, kind of impersonal, kind of robotic-like. Have a good day, okay. How was your day? Fine. Sleep good, good night. And you just do the same thing over and over and over again. That brings polarization. That isolates people. Cooperation begins with putting on the garment called compassion. Compassion. The Greek word behind compassion would be splanchna. Splanchna, which is where we get our English word spleen. Spleen. Where's your spleen? Your spleen's in your gut, in your tummy, in your stomach. It means we've got an emotional connection to our spouses, our children, even the people we work with. We actually care for them. We got a gut. First thing Paul says, put on to dress for relational success is have a heart. Stop working so much with your head and have a heart for that 8th grade daughter, that older parent, that wayward teenager. Oh, that'll do a lot to start moving toward cooperation. Next item Paul says to put on is kindness. Kindness. When I first got married, I enrolled in a foreign language program. It wasn't Greek. I'd learned some Greek by then. It wasn't Hebrew. I was up to my eyeballs in Hebrew by the time I got married. No, this foreign language program was called Interpreting Your Spouse's Signs 101. It was the most rigorous, challenging, foreign language program I'd ever been in. And I thought I was doing really good. I thought I was passing. Until we went on our first vacation. You see, interpreting your spouse's signs is really difficult. Because it's not just what they say, it's how they say it. And not just how they say it, but when they say it. And not just when they say it, but where they say it. You got to connect all these dots. And so I thought I was doing it good until we went on this vacation. And Lisa gave me a verbal sign. We're packing the car. Okay, I couldn't get that. Kind of slow. I couldn't get that. And then she gave me a nonverbal sign. She began to pack the car. Never one to take on the simple jobs of life. I decided to organize the road maps. I got all our road maps. I put them all on the floor and began to organize the road maps. Lisa began to not speak for a while. I interpreted that to mean she was silently thanking God for such an organized husband. At the end of the day, she said, I'm going to bed now, Reed. You can sleep on the couch. I had missed the signs. It wasn't time to organize the maps. It was time to pack the car. I was not dressed in kindness. Kindness, you want a definition of kindness? Kindness is other-centered. Not me-centered, not my agenda-centered, not what I need-centered. No, kindness is other-centered. So every day I get up, I perform a ritual that goes like this. Forget the maps, load the car. Paul goes on. Compassion, splankna, spleen of God, kindness. He says, put on humility. Humility. Oh, I told you this is shocking body wear. I told you this is countercultural. No one dresses like this anymore, right? Humility. They will run right over you if you're too humble. No, you got to kind of have a little American pride. Snoopy, one of my favorite cartoon characters, in the first frame of a cartoon, gets a new tennis racket. In the second frame, he loses his tennis match. In the third frame of the comic strip, he destroys his tennis racket. In the fourth and last frame, Snoopy is seen writing a letter. Quote, "Gentlemen, under separate cover, I'm returning a defective tennis racket." It's not whether you win or lose, it's where you place the blame. Pride, opposite of humility, is always placing the blame. It's your fault. It's not mine. You don't get it. I get it all the time. You. Oh, great way to destroy any relationship. Humility is not about fixing the blame. Humility is about fixing the problem. So clothe yourselves in compassion, kindness, humility. Paul goes on. Clothe yourselves with gentleness. Gentleness. In Paul's day, people would see this word translated gentleness and think strength under control. That's it. Strength under control. Gentleness is being in a position where you have every right to lay into someone. You have all the evidence on your side. It is time to do a Donald Trump on these people and say, you're fired. That's it. I've had it. But you don't do that. That's gentleness, strength. Oh, I got all the opinions and the facts and figures on my side, but I don't lay into you. It's strength under control. Fifth piece that Paul mentions in Colossians 3, verse 12, would be patience. Patience. Patience, a very colorful word in the original Greek, makrothumia. Makro means long, as opposed to micro means short, and thumia is where we get the English word thermometer, thermostat, thermos. It all deals with heat. So patience in the Greek-speaking world means a long time, macro, to heat up. You can tell if you're patient or not by the way you wait for a slow elevator. Have you ever noticed that? The elevator is a little slow. So what we do sometimes is what? Keep pushing the button. That'll do it, right? Push, push, push. Or you know what? I've seen others. You've seen others too. They don't push. They just kind of start going like that. That's kind of interesting. This will help a lot, won't it? Yeah. Some people like me will take the stairs. Forget the elevator. And some people put out their smartphone and start impatiently scrolling through items. How do you respond when someone is slow? Slow to pick up on what's going on. Slow to pick up their room. Slow to pick up the truth. How do you respond? Are you so impatient? Your eyes kind of pushing the button and getting so impatient. Well, then forget it. I'm taking the stairs. No, Paul says, you want relational success? Clothe yourselves with patience. Makrothumia. Slow to heat up. But Paul goes on. Remember I said there are 7 of these. 7, the perfect biblical number. Here we go. What's the 6th piece to all of this? It's the next verse, Colossians 3, verse 13. It's titled, Restoration Instead of Condemnation. Restoration now instead of condemnation. Because it's really easy to condemn in relationships. You understand that. The longer I'm in a relationship with you and you with me, the more dirt I see. The honeymoon's over. Now I see you for your real colors. And you know what my initial response is? Condemnation. Paul says, no. That won't help you in relationships. We move from restoration instead of condemnation. So this gospel garment has to do with, of course, forgiveness, right? That's what he says. Bear with each other, forgive what other grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. 6th piece, forgiveness. Forgiveness. There's a Lutheran pastor who, while in college, committed a huge sin. He was so ashamed of it. No one really knew about it, but he knew. And this Lutheran pastor just couldn't live with a clean conscience. In his congregation was a woman who regularly said she talked with Jesus. The Lutheran pastor was a little bit skeptical of a woman who said, I regularly talk with Jesus. So the Lutheran pastor talked with this woman and said, the next time you talk with Jesus, ask Jesus this question. What was a huge sin I committed while I was in college? Because no one knew. He thought, that will put the squash on this woman talking to Jesus. Months passed. He met up with this woman. And he said, hey, have you been talking to Jesus lately? Well, yes, I have. He said, boy, this is going to shut her up. Well, did you ask about the great sin I committed while I was in college? She said, I sure did. The pastor said, well, what did Jesus say? And the woman said, you know what Jesus said? I don't remember. You want a definition of forgiveness? That's it. I don't remember. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 5. Love keeps no record of wrongs. That's restoration instead of condemnation. Forgive, Paul says, as the Lord forgave you. How does the Lord forgive you? You say, Lord, you remember that time and this time and that? You know what he says today to all of us? I don't remember. How could he do that? Finally, it's not what Jesus wore that is most shocking. The most shocking body wear of the ages, bar none, is what Jesus didn't wear. You know, don't you? Rome would never put clothes on the victims that they crucified. Obviously, for Western art sensibilities, we normally have a loincloth on our Lord, as this picture obviously does. But Rome would never put a garment, a cloak, upon those that they crucified. No, Rome wanted to maximize disgrace and shame and public dishonor. So Rome would strip you naked and pin you to wood with nothing on. And that's what they did to Jesus. And he suffered all of that bloody horror and that naked shame because he would rather die like that than live without you. And the utter atrocity of crucifying the Lord of glory naked means that you and I claim Isaiah 61 verse 10. Did you catch that this morning? Because of Jesus' shameful death, you and I are now clothed in garments of salvation. We are arrayed in robes of righteousness. The Lord looks at us because of the events at Calvary and says, I don't remember. You're clothed, you're washed clean in the blood of the butchered lamb. Paul says, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Put away that grudge. Put away that hard heart. Put away that chip on your shoulder. And put away condemnation. And put on restoration. Forgiveness. That's the sixth piece of clothing. The seventh is actually the most important, isn't it? As we go to the next verse, Colossians 3, verse 14. Under the title affirmation instead of alienation. Alienation, polarization, condemnation. Boy, that's a good way to ruin your life and ruin those in your life. No, Paul says, in this case, affirmation. Affirmation. What is affirming? What's the affirming body wear we're talking about? Paul tells us. Over all of these virtues, all the other six, put on the belt of love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. In Paul's day, if you didn't wear a belt, you'd lose all your clothing. That's kind of ugly. Whoa, streaker! You had to have a belt or you'll lose it all. In our day, we will lose all of these gospel garments we talked about unless we put on the belt. And what's the belt that binds it all together in perfect unity? Paul says, using the Greek word that's the highest form of love in the Greek language, agape. You know that, right? Agape. Agape isn't I love you if. I love you if you love me back. I love you if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Oh, no, that's not agape. Agape is not, I love you because. I love you because you're so good looking. You make a mint. You're a hunk of burning love. Oh, no. That's not love. That's lust. No, agape is, I don't love you if. I don't love you because. I don't love you because what you can do for me. I love you, period. No strings attached. Paul says if you don't have that love, you're going to lose it all. If I don't have agape, I'm just another animal on the planet looking to instrumentalize whatever I can for my good and my glory. No, if I don't have agape, I just chew people up and spit them out. But Paul says, with agape, I start affirming instead of alienating. All of this talk of shocking body wear leads me to recall this company in Greensboro, North Carolina. Maybe you've heard about them. It's called Buzz Off. That's the name of the company. Buzz Off. And they ask you this question. Are you tired of putting insect repellent on your skin? Then Buzz Off is for you. Buzz Off has found a way to hook insect repellent to clothing. And this just in, a new Paris fashion designer has designed shocking bodywear. Clothes that are edible. You can eat your clothes. They're made out of what? Bread. But you know the most shocking style out there? It's what Paul describes in these 3 verses in Colossians chapter 3. Eugene Peterson, in his Bible translation called The Message, puts it this way. So chosen by God for this new life of love, dress in the wardrobe God picked out for you. Isn't that interesting? We don't have any choice in this. Remember when you were a child and your parents said, you will wear this. That's what God's done. He knows what's best. He's picked it out. And what is the wardrobe? There it is. Compassion, kindness, humility, quiet strength, discipline. Be even-tempered, content with second place, quick to forgive an offense. Forgive quickly and completely as the Master forgave you. And regardless of what else you put on, wear love. It's your basic all-purpose garment. Never be without it. This clothing is always in style. This clothing never wears out. This clothing makes you stunningly beautiful. And this clothing restores relationships. So what are you waiting for? Put it on. Amen.